Welcome to Horror Boys. It's a podcast on the internet. I'm Austin, joined as always by
Chris.
And we are the Horror Boys. And this isn't any old podcast on this old internet. This is a horror movie review podcast specifically, where every week we review a horror movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's basically it. That's the intro.
That is what we do.
If you made it this far, you've made it through the intro.
Congratulations.
Now for the second part of the intro. Where we intro the movie specifically that we're talking about. Today we are talking about The Voices, which is directed by Marjane Satrapi, who was a graphic novelist whose first two movies, Persepolis and Chicken with Plums, were based off of some of her graphic novels. This was one of her first works that weren't her making movies of her graphic novels.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Our writer is Michael R. Perry, who, for his horror credit, he was also the writer for Paranormal Activity 2? I've never seen any of them, but I feel like that might be before people really start hating them.
Yeah, I guess.
But also, I'd argue that I don't know if any other writers of those movies deserve that much credit. What?
Yeah.
But he does write a great
fair.
movie here. Spoiler.
Yeah,
So maybe don't
agreed.
hold that against him.
Don't watch Paranormal Activity 2. Watch The Voices.
Yeah. We have our composer, who is Oliver Burnett, who, work before this was work on Marjane's other work. He also did her two, movies based off her graphic novels.
Adaptations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then our director of photography is Maxime Alexandri, who has a bunch of horror credits, including Maniac, the Crazies reboot. These are both the reboots, not the originals, but the Maniac reboot, the Crazies reboot, The Nun, and Annabelle Creations. So
she's in the Conjuring universe.
two of those four. They're real. This director photographer, he was really into being in remakes or Conjuring movies.
Yeah.
And this. Which I will say he does once again does a really good job. So maybe I don't know if those other movies are good, cinematography wise, but there are some really pretty shots in this movie.
Yeah.
So yeah. So let's open this movie. We open with a little montage. Woo!
Woo! And an original song about the town of Milton.
Yeah.
Milton! Everyone loves Milton.
Yeah, we also have a little cuts in through the montage of these cute cartoony credits of knives being sliced through. It's pretty cool.
And a cat.
Yeah, a little cat. And we are at this is also the montages of our soon-to-be-known character of Jerry working at Milton Fixtures and Faucets International in the factory. Ooh.
Yeah.
It's an industry town here. We got.
Yeah. It is on the Milton town sign.
It's true. I was more just going off of the old that's a thing like the work towns where it was basically the town probably sprouted up because the factory existed is the way it sounds because
But it is Milton, the industry town.
Yeah. Yes. We meet our main character Jerry, who is played by Ryan Reynolds.
Woo!
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
He's Deadpool, I feel like, is the biggest thing he's done in his career at this point.
But for his horror credits, he's in the Amityville Horror remake that...
Once again, don't judge his work in this movie off of his other movie.
Or the Green Lantern, which also, again,
Or X-Men Origins Wolverine. Oh my gosh. Huh.
Look, he's done some less than great movies.
Yeah.
Some would say less than good.
Some
or
would say
less
terrible.
than acceptable. Less than bad.
Some would say there were a few terrible ones. Yeah.
And those are all fair criticism.
I don't know. I think
However,
of the ones we mentioned, I don't know if Amityville Horror Reboot is considered terrible, but the other two are.
His acting isn't that.
His superhero movies are considered terrible that aren't Deadpool.
But in this movie,
and also to be fair to Ryan Reynolds,
phenomenal.
He's not the person people ever point out as the problem in those movies.
Right.
So
it's the movie.
Yeah, it's the movie he's in, not him. But yeah. So he's in the factory, and he's told by his boss, whose name is Dennis Kowalski, who is played by Paul Chahidi, who was in Christopher Robin. Oh. That's his horror credit.
Yeah, Winnie the Pooh is kind of terrifying if you think about it.
And yeah, his boss is telling him that he's been chosen to volunteer to help plan the company party because, that's how it works sometimes. It's like, hey, you definitely need to be the one to volunteer here. Understand? But, Jerry is
no one wants to do it.
Yeah, Jerry is very enthusiastic about it. He accepts, immediately. Yeah. We then head to later at Jerry's home where he hugs his dog, Bosco, as his cat, Mr. Whiskers, looks on. Then he heads into his bedroom, and he's looking for a shirt to get ready for tomorrow for the meeting. And we hear an unknown voice who is just berating and making fun of him, and making fun of his being excited about this work opportunity. Basically, just saying, "Yeah, they're gonna screw you over. You shouldn't be excited."
Yeah.
But we don't know who it is yet. We don't know what that voice is yet. But then we do get a title card, woo, with a knife slash under it. Ooh.
Oh.
This movie's gonna have killing in it. Oh.
Gore. Probably.
I mean, it's when you have a knife slash like that, it better, or you've falsely advertised.
Done something wrong.
Yeah, you falsely advertised your title card.
And your entire opening sequence.
Yeah, there's that too. We then head to the party planning meeting, where we meet Fiona, who is played by Gemma Arterton. Maybe that's how it's pronounced. Maybe it's not. I'm sorry.
Arterton?
Sure.
Probably.
That's fine with me. Who played Gretel in the Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunter movie.
Yep.
Alongside Jeremy Renner. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. She was in the same universe as Hawkeye.
Yeah. She is an actress who I've seen that thumbnail of that movie, and I always think it's Colby Smulders in the movie until I click on it and go, that's not Colby Smulders in this movie. Just like the box art for the movie, basically. It's like, that looks like Colby Smulders. It's not, though. It's this girl.
Oh, that's Gemma. That's Gemma Arterton.
Yeah. Then we also have John, who is played by Adi. Ooh, I can't tell my own handwriting here. I think Shankar, I think is what that I wrote. Who's actually more of a producer. He's produced this movie, as well as Netflix, Castlevania, and Dredd.
Ooh.
I really like Dredd. Dredd's a very underrated movie.
I'm a big fan of Castlevania anime.
It's fair. Well, he produced it.
All right, John.
Yeah. We also have Dave, who is played by Sam Spruell of Taken 3. And to stick with our theme of weird fiction, fantasy fiction being turned into movies that no one wanted to see, he was also in Snow White and the Huntsman.
Yeah. Fair enough.
And we also meet Cheryl, who is played by Alessa Kardec of a bunch of German short films, is what her career mostly was before this. I do believe this movie was not shot in America, because almost none of the cast is American. But maybe it's a coincidence. But almost everyone in the cast is from Europe, so I'm assuming this movie was probably shot somewhere in Europe. But yeah,
maybe it's filmed in Germany.
Maybe, because I do think Marjan, the director, she's French, but I want to say the the director of photography was German. So, who knows? It's a bunch of Europeans in this movie.
Europeans?
I don't know why I said it so weird.
Yeah, I'm sure our European fan base.
We have a little bit of one. We do. The podcast app says we have some high listeners from other countries. Also, high listeners from this country.
Hi, foreign viewers, and hi, international viewers.
Sure.
No, national.
Hi, people.
Hello, everyone. This is your shout out if you're watching.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching, I guess.
At the meeting, Jerry is way more excited to be involved than everyone else.
Than anyone else, yeah.
The only other person who seems even kind of happy to be there is Fiona, who wants a conga line at the party. The scene ends with Jerry loving free pizza and not liking sushi. Which, I respect. Yeah. I respect that, personally.
I mean, I don't respect the not liking sushi part, but, if liking free pizza makes you a psychopath, then...
I don't know. I stand by him. Like, you see this. We're the peak characters in the scene. You're like, well, you see, it's actually artists. Like, I'm like, it's still raw fish. I'm good. I'm with Jerry here. It's like, no, I'm good. I don't want raw fish.
That's tasty, though.
No, have fun. Have fun with your raw fish.
I will.
Okay.
A lot of it.
We then head to Jerry's therapy session with his therapist, Dr. Warren, who is played by Jackie Weaver of The Disaster Artist. Was a movie she was in that I was really like, oh, I like The Disaster Artist. I don't remember her in it, but she's in it, and that's cool.
Fun.
Jerry updates Dr. Warren on his work and how he's doing well. We also find out in this scene that Jerry isn't taking his medication.
Well, not all the time.
Yeah. Jerry also says that he isn't hearing voices like his mother did.
Yeah.
Definitely isn't hearing those.
Not disembodied.
Yeah. There's definitely bodies to all the voices he hears.
Yeah.
He then tells her about how he likes a girl. Aww. And he's worried how much to tell her about all this. But I feel like those are fair worries. Yeah. Then we head to a conga montage. Woo! Conga montage.
Where they're playing Sing a Happy Song.
Yeah, it's our first time we hear it.
Yeah.
Then Jerry and Fiona kind of do a little dance at the end, kind of just them. And Jerry sees Fiona in like slow motion with butterflies flying around her.
Yeah.
As we mentioned, this is where you start hearing you can hear the lyrics that I realized was Sing a Happy Song, which is Sing a Happy by the OJs. Look at me knowing what it was in the credits. It's the only reason I know.
Oh.
But yeah. At Jerry's house, he's real happy until Mr. Whiskers, in the voice from earlier, asks him if he played harmonica with the girl.
Yeah.
Then he tells him he never will. This Mr. Whiskers guy is kind of mean. It's a mean cat.
Yeah, he kind of sucks.
Yeah. Bosco also talks, and he's telling him that Mr. Whiskers should shut up, and both Bosco and Ryan. Nope, sorry, Both Bosco and Mr. Whiskers are played by Ryan Reynolds. I was just bringing that up here. They are both played by Ryan Reynolds, doing completely different voices. You can't fully tell they're him, which is nice, but It is him. Jerry then takes Bosco for a walk to escape Mr. Whiskers' negativity. At work the next day, Jerry annoys his coworker, Tom, played by Alex Torndowski, by singing Sing a Happy Song.
Yeah, and a very high pitch.
Yeah.
Which, honestly, good on Ryan Reynolds, I guess. I was impressed that he could sing that high.
Fair. After work, Jerry heads to the accounting office to talk to Fiona, who doesn't seem happy to see him. Lisa, played by Anna Kendrick of Pitch Perfect,
yep.
Amongst other things. That's definitely her biggest role.
Yeah.
She was in Rapture Palooza. That's a movie that existed. Well, Kendrick, she actually took the role in part due to being a big fan of Marjan's Persepolis. She was like, "Oh, I want to be in a movie that she's making."
Interesting.
So, and Lisa invites Jerry to join the accounting girls to go out for drinks, to the disappointing eyes from Fiona. The three of them are joined by an unnamed accountant and Allison, who is played by Ella Smith. At the dinner, there's a very awkward actually, after the dinner is what I think I was supposed to say there. Wait, is it?
Yeah. What is after the dinner that it happens, where everyone's like,
yeah, my wording
Lisa,
was weird. I
Fiona
wrote at
and Jerry are discussing
this
rides.
Hmm?
I was just talking about how Fiona, Lisa, and Jerry are discussing like rides home.
Oh yeah, gotcha.
And how uncomfortable and awkward it is the whole time.
Yeah, I don't understand this scene because I'll just explain how it happens. Because it goes where Lisa, because you can tell she's definitely crushing on Jerry already. We can tell that. You can see it.
Yeah.
She invited him here in the first place, and she's like, "Hey, could you give me a ride home?" And then Fiona gives her this look like, "How dare you?"
Mm-hmm.
And then she's like, oh, "Okay, you're giving Fiona a ride." But we find out, like, in a couple scenes, spoiler, Fiona has no interest in Jerry. Why does she care that Lisa wanted to have him drive her home? Like, it just feels, it felt almost like, oh, it's because she maybe is interested in him at this point. But then you find out she never is. So I don't understand this interaction at all.
It very much just feels like Fiona wants to be like the queen, maybe, of accounting.
I guess
doesn't want anyone else to be happy.
I guess it just this scene felt so weird to me because at first when I was watching, I was like, because when I first watched it, I was like, I didn't realize that Fiona had no. So I was like, oh, I guess Fiona does have interest in him. Weird her reaction to him coming earlier, but I don't know. This whole thing is just it's like it really caught me off guard because it's like, what?
It's a very awkward scene, yeah.
But it ends with Lisa's going to take a cab, and Jerry is giving Fiona a ride home. On the ride home, Jerry invites Fiona out for a date on Friday to Shishin.
Yeah. Shishan.
A Chinese restaurant with a show that's the best spectacle in the world.
Yeah.
That's what, he said. That's what Jerry
According
says.
to Jerry.
I have no reason to not believe him. So...
Yeah.
And she agrees, which, you can tell there's like some hesitance in the agreement, but she does say yes.
Yeah. He does.
Yep. Once home, Mr. Whiskers apologizes, and Jerry gets him some cat food. All right, next scene.
Yeah.
Jerry goes to accounting to drop the address off for Shishin, but Lisa and Allison inform him Fiona had already left. Once he leaves, we find out...
Fiona pops up behind their cubicle.
Fiona was just hiding. Oh, she isn't planning to go to Shishin.
That wascal.
But partially the reason she's not going is because she already actually had plans to go karaoke with the girls. So, But rather than, call him right now and tell him that, like Lisa brings up, she says, "Oh, I'll leave him a message on his machine." She never does. Or she does and he just doesn't get it. I don't know. It's not clear if she actually did remember to do it or not, but it doesn't matter. We then cut back, and the next couple scenes are like back and forth between the girls at karaoke and Jerry at Shishin, with some of the things he sees, because they're just singing songs. So I'm not going to talk about what songs they say or anything. We're just going to move on from that part of the scene. But he has a weird... It's a show, for sure. We got a Chinese Elvis. We got a martial arts demonstration.
Mm-hmm.
And then
he talks to a goldfish.
Yeah, and then he talks to a goldfish because, he's realizing he was stood up.
Yeah.
Then we cut to a little bit later. I'm skipping over a quick, nothing scene of how Fiona gets to her car. She gets a ride from Lisa to her car. But once Fiona's at her car, it won't start. And she can't call for help because she had dropped her phone in the scene I just skipped talking about. It's also pouring down rain right now. And she walks out to the road. Actually, the rain had stopped at this point, but she did get in the rain before. But by the time she gets to the road, it's gone. And she waves down Jerry for a ride. And after she finds out he didn't get her message, which the way she delivers this line, it does feel like she's genuinely like, it does sound like she did leave a message somewhere. Because she does seem like, what, you didn't, how did you not know? You know? So, maybe she's not bad. No, she's not. She really isn't. She was trying to nicely put this guy down who's kind of weird.
Very especially awkward. Yeah.
After she finds out he didn't get her message, saying she couldn't make it. I already said that basically. They decide to head to the county line for this late night burger joint, I believe called Donner's or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. She also decides to take off her shirt because it's soaking wet and put on a blanket he has in her car. That happens.
Yeah.
On the way,
stares, and then she's like, "Don't stare," and he goes, "Ah!"
Yeah, he goes full like elf and like runs into a wall practically, but he doesn't. He's whatever. You get the point. I'm moving on. The scene wasn't in my notes. The her getting undressed because I didn't think it was important because it doesn't really ever actually come up again. But whatever. I thought it happened. I guess I'll bring it up. I don't know why. Shouldn't have. Mistakes are made.
So now they're headed to the burger joint.
They're on the way to the burger joint.
There's a cool little visual bit where he looks over and sees her as an
angel.
It's
a little bit later. We're not there yet. Don't worry. I'll get to that. Don't you worry. Don't you worry.
Well,
on the way, they discuss how
Lisa
thinks she brings up how like Lisa thinks Jerry's hot. So we know, we now have that confirmed. Then they also talk about where Jerry is from. We find out he was actually born in Germany and moved here when he was a kid. Then Jerry looks over and sees Fiona as an angel. And he also then says like, "Oh, you're from heaven," and she says no, she's from Reading, which is closer to hell. Which sorry, international viewers, that's her words, not mine. I have no opinion on Reading. Unless we're talking about Reading, California, and then I still don't really have that much of opinions, but I have been there, so I guess I could have an opinion. That, though, sparks a trivia question Jerry wants to ask her. He tells her that in the Bible, 4 angels have names. 3 of them are Michael, Raphael, and Gabriel. And what's the 4th
Who's the 4th one?
Ooh. And he's like, you're probably forgetting he's an angel. But she doesn't have a chance to figure it out before they crash into a deer.
Yeah.
The deer tells Jerry to end his suffering. And Jerry cuts its throat, spraying Fiona with blood.
Yeah.
He then blurts out that the answer is Lucifer. If you are paying attention, the answer is Lucifer.
Right.
So yeah.
He's fallen angel.
Mm-hmm. Somehow that, like, the killing of the deer wasn't it. But when he then blurts out Lucifer, that's like, she's like, he's bringing up Satan. I'm out of here. She runs. She starts running into the forest, and he's yelling after her and saying, like, he asked me to do it, and why are you running? You're going to get lost.
Also, he is running with a knife in his hand.
Yeah. He does still have the knife for some reason. They both end up tripping, with Jerry accidentally stabbing Fiona in the gut. Then he says, I love you, before stabbing her in the chest to end her suffering. Then he stabs her repeatedly.
Stabbing her a whole lot.
He repeatedly just stabs her, saying, I'm sorry, in a beautifully framed wide shot. The way it is set, I love it. He then gives this really huge smile to the camera. So it's almost like maybe he wasn't fully sorry. Well, then he goes home, and he showers off the blood and starts crying. So I guess he did feel bad. After the shower, Bosco tells him to go to the cops, but Mr. Whiskers tells him not to unless he wants to go to jail.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, Mr. Whiskers is kind of he's kind of a voice of reason in that one part of it here. You are right. If you do that, you will go to jail. And it does seem like neither Jerry or Bosco were thinking about that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Mr. Whiskers says Jerry obviously wanted to kill Fiona because, he took the knife with him. Which, fair.
Good point.
Yeah.
But why did you need the knife to chase after?
Yeah. Mr. Whiskers says Jerry's not evil. It was just instinct. And they both agree that killing is the only time either of them have truly felt alive. Mr. Whisker tells him to go get rid of the body before his DNA links him to the murder. We then head to the beautiful, serene forest where Jerry sees the now bloodless body of Fiona.
Yeah, weird.
So yeah, he wraps it up in a carpet, takes it, and then, but he also, butterflies are flying around her during this part.
Yeah, and all her wounds are closed up.
They're all closed up. Yeah, she's all good now. But he also doesn't notice that there are just some of her, guts and a shoe just lying there that he left behind. Oops.
Whoa.
At the hardware store, Jerry buys saws and Tupperware. He then has a conversation with Sheriff Weinbacher, played by Stanley Townsend, who played 3 different Cars in Cars 2. What a man!
3 different cars.
Yeah. He plays like 3 different. He plays 2 of the lemons at the lemon party. Don't Google that though. Disney does not want you to Google that. They'll make the joke, but don't you dare think about actually looking it up.
Not go to the lemon party.
Yeah. As well as he plays like a tow truck.
Huh.
Yeah. So he plays 3 different characters in Cars 3, which that's pretty. Or Cars 2, sorry, and that's pretty cool. Cars 2 will be the most referenced non-horror movie that we bring up on this podcast. I will make it happen.
I mean, I don't doubt that at all.
So yeah, he's talking to Sheriff Weinbacher about how he has a broken windshield and he hit a deer accidentally. But the sheriff's like, don't worry, I'm not gonna write you up for hunting out of season.
Yeah.
Then Jerry realizes he's late for therapy and heads to therapy with a body still in his trunk. Yeah. At therapy, Dr. Warren asks him questions like, does he hear voices and cry a lot? Which he says no to both.
And then she asks about the medication.
Yeah. And he says usually, and then explains how, it evens things out. It stops the bad, but it also stops the good, and how, the beauty of life. And he, goes on and on kind of about the good side of not taking the pills. Yeah. And she's like, so you've stopped taking them entirely. And he's like, yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's like, hey, you really gotta do this, because right now that would make you in non-compliance, and I'd have to report you to the Department of Corrections. And at that point, you realize, okay. He did something. Before all this,
Yeah.
I wonder what happened. We then head to Jerry's apartment, where he cuts up Fiona's body with various tools, and putting the pieces into Tupperware.
It's a pretty extensive scene.
Yeah, it's an extensive scene. He uses a saw,
but
he looks like
really
a hacksaw,
can be summed up in
a regular
one
saw,
sentence.
no, it's not a saw. It's a hacksaw. Then he uses a machete and then a meat cleaver.
And we see the progress as her legs, which were initially dangling from the counter, recede up and up until there's no more leg.
And also, you see, the pile of Tupperware in front of him slowly get higher and higher, covering up more of his face. Yeah. Various tools. Also, his pets are silently looking on. No little comments from either of them right now. And he puts Fiona's head in the fridge. He's about to take his meds before Mr. Whiskers talks him out of it, being like, hey, we'll go away. You don't want that to happen.
Yeah, it'll be lonely without us.
Yeah. Then Fiona's head yells at him to take them, so he does. We then start to see a flashback of Jerry's stepfather, who's played by Paul Brightwell of Sleepy Hollow and Last Night in Soho. He's a little bit of horror credit there. who was just yelling at him as a child about his sock puppet bunny monkey, who he heard a voice from. So it's just a little sequence of that, of just seeing that he had kind of an abusive stepdad.
Yeah.
He then comes to, and now what he sees around him is this filthy, trash-covered, bloody room that he actually lives in.
Filthy, disgusting.
Yeah. He starts to freak out, especially when his, Bosco and Mr. Whiskers aren't talking to him, and he dumps the rest of his pills down the sink. When he wakes up in the morning, though, hey, he's good.
Hold on. He also opens the fridge and sees Fiona's head, which also, is decayed and disgusting looking.
Sure.
And it's very sad that also her head is not talking to him anymore.
Yes.
Because he loves her.
You're right. I'm sorry. I missed the quick shot of her head. That was part of the freaking out. He freaked out. He freaked out at all of what he actually sees. And he dumps some, and then we cut to him waking up in the morning, and hey, look, the room looks back to normal.
Yeah.
And he talks to Fiona's head, who now uses a bunch of generic British slang because it's him, which is great. It's still the voice is still voiced by Gemma, but I love the change in her because now she's all chip chip cheerio governor. It's just using all the most generic terms you can think of because it's him doing it.
Yeah, Jerry's.
Yeah,
imagination.
It's what Jerry thinks a British person is, and I was like, oh, I like that. It's a small detail, but it's cool.
It's really funny. Yeah, in a very dark way.
Yeah. Fiona asks him to get her a friend by killing Lisa from accounting. And, he at first kind of doesn't seem into it, but then she says, I love you, and he's like, oh, I love you too. So maybe he's going to think about it. He drives himself to work with butterflies swirling around his head. Also, he's
also giving this deadpan stare.
Yeah, a big deadpan stare and a big smile too. It's unsettling. Yeah. Also, there's a song playing here that's Jerry and Fiona, which is actually sung by Ryan Reynolds.
Pretty great.
So yeah, it's great. At work, he imagines a synchronized forklift dance.
Yeah.
Before heading inside, where Mr. Kowalski says he saw him on Friday. But it was at, Shishan. Yeah. Then he asks him if he's seen Fiona, and Jerry says no, and says, maybe she went back to England.
Yeah.
That's why she left her car, because she knew she's gone. I'm going to miss her.
Yeah. She went back to where she came from.
I'm going to miss her. It's great. Back at home, Jerry watches the animals playing harmonica channel before switching to the animals killing other animals channel. I don't know if I have those channels. I don't think my cable provider has those two. And I'm okay with that. I don't want them to. I'm just saying I don't think we have those channels.
I don't have cable, so
it's fair. Mr. Whiskers tells him to kill. I just want to say, I want to bring it up here as just a thing as I'm reading it through here. During the movie, didn't question it at all. But when I have to read the name Mr. Whiskers over and over again, it is so this is the weirdest movie ever. And Mr. Whiskers tells him to kill someone, and I'm like, what am I reading?
You understand?
Yeah. Mr. Whiskers tells him to kill again, to feel alive. Bosco tells him not to. And the scene goes on. They kind of go back and forth for a little bit. That's the gist of it. It's funny. It's well done, but I'm not going to write down every line of dialogue in the movie.
There is a lot of dialogue between Jerry, Mr. Whiskers, and Bosco.
Yeah. Jerry and Lisa go to David's karaoke. I'm once again skipping over once again kind of the shortest scene ever, but there is a scene where he goes to her to the office to talk to her to set up this date, but nothing important happened in it. So we're just jumping to them at the karaoke place where they're having drinks together. They start talking about their cats and how cats are really
they suck.
Yeah, they're really in charge and they suck. And they, the kind of conversation ends with her being like, "I hope you get to meet my cat someday." And he's like, "Oh, I do too." And then they decide to maybe go have a meet her cat right now. They head to her place to see so he can meet the cat. Who the cat's name is, Pighead. That's important. dialogue from the scene. Very important.
Yeah, definitely.
But instead, on his way to her house, he says, I'm going to take you somewhere else. He takes her to his childhood home. And he tells her about his mom and how she was always sad and homesick because his stepdad made her move. He made her choose between him or moving, and she chose him. He then tells her that he used to look up at the stars and make believe and that they were his friends. Because, he didn't have any friends.
Only boy.
Because kids were really mean to him and called him ultimate crying machine amongst other, German jokes.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were just... Jeez. It's really...
Kids talk.
You're like, oh, crap. Dang, I feel really bad for this murderer. Which is kind of a theme of this movie.
Yeah.
Which, respect to it. They start to head upstairs before he remembers the time when he went upstairs and talked to his mom. Kid Jerry is played by Gulliver McGrath of Dark Shadows and The Loved Ones. And Jerry's mom is played by Valerie Koch, I believe is how it's pronounced in German. But it's Kaoch, which is either Koch or a lot of people say Koch, but I believe it's actually, I watched a whole video on it, I believe it's actually supposed to be pronounced Koch, because that's how it would be pronounced in German. You just have a weird H sound kind of. It's hard to pronounce.
It's like the gun company.
Yeah. But yeah, so they say when he's talking to his mom, he's talking to her the day they were, the people were coming, the hospital was coming to pick her up to take her to the mental hospital because she had, told them about her hearing voices. Kid Jerry tells his mom he hears voices too. She tells him she knows, but tells him not to tell anyone. When they hear the sirens, they both cry, and she says she can't go back. Then she breaks a glass, and she tries to stab her own neck, but asks Jerry to finish it for her. Jerry closes the door. And we're back to the present day, as we see Lisa checking on a crying Jerry. We get a quick flash of Kid Jerry covered in his mom's blood as the cops came in. Lisa then kisses Jerry and tells him to take her home. As they walk out, he leaves a knife at the house.
Oh.
We'll pause there for a second. I kind of rushed through all of that, but I want to just talk about this scene. This scene is...
the trauma ex machina.
The way it hurt my heart. I was watching this the first time with my dad, and we both kind of looked over to what is this? What happened to this movie? This is I know it's a dark comedy, but when they hit me with that, heartbreaking moment of seeing this kid have to kill his own mother, I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Suddenly you really start to sympathize. You're like, well, I guess that would really traumatize someone in a major way.
But I would also say
probably cause them to have a fractured psyche.
Something they never say here, but I thought of my own personal interpretation. I'm not sure if it even happened the way we saw it, though. There is an element of, we've seen a lot of other times where he decides people want him to end their suffering.
Oh, that's true.
Did this actually happen the way we saw it? We'll never know. And I really love that we'll never. That's one of those moments where I'm oh, I like that it's making me wonder. Because, the way it's presented, sure, but it's presented from Jerry's point of view. So, I don't know.
And we already know that Jerry had heard voices before.
Yeah. And then also, when we see them come in the room, he's covered in her blood. And it's did he just kill her? We'll never know. And I'm okay with that.
Pretty wild.
Yeah. But yeah, it's great. This scene's great. Also, I love the ending where we realize, oh crap, he definitely was planning on killing her, but he's deciding not to because, he's feeling an emotional connection now, so. Excuse me. Yeah, they head back to Lisa's home and play some harmonica. Woo!
Yep.
I mean, too bad I said it like that, like it was really great. It's very tasteful. You see them sit down in a bed and then they cut away. It's not like a harmonica scene, but
I wake up the next morning and Lisa's making coffee.
Yep, she's making them coffee. They're having a little conversation. They both seem pretty happy, relatively. Jerry seems a little distant. She kind of coaxes him to find out why, and he tells her it's because he had a different plans for last night. He had planned on going a different way, But, it's a good different, though, because now he doesn't feel alone. And she also...
Neither does she.
Yeah. It's a really sweet scene, which is one of those moments, again, where you're watching a movie like this, where I'm like, oh, I hate you, movie.
Oh.
I'm like, how dare you make me want them to be together? I know that won't happen. I hate you, movie. Yeah. But also love you. Like, I want to make... In case someone... I don't want to clip that. I hate that they make me feel, because I know they're going to hurt me. But I'm fine with being hurt, because I know it's what's... You get the point, audience. You understand what I mean. Yeah. But then they realize that they're going to be late for work because it is Wednesday. All that happened on a Tuesday night. So
very exciting Tuesday.
Yeah, very exciting Tuesday night. They then leave. He actually has to stop at his house though to feed his pets first. At home, Bosco is very happy for him. Mr. Whiskers just wants food, and Fiona is angry that he did not bring her a friend.
Yeah. At
work, he is called to go to the accounting office for a payroll issue, but it's actually just so him and Lisa can make out in the copy room. Until
Allison walks in.
Allison has to interrupt them. So Jerry leaves. And then Lisa asks Allison for Jerry's address so she can surprise him with a gift. And at that moment, your heart sinks and you're like, no, don't do it.
No.
Why? No. Why can't they just live happy forever? He's only killed one person. They can live happy now.
It wasn't exactly a nice person.
Yeah, and it was an accident.
Maybe, probably at first.
I mean, probably, yeah. The initial stab was an accident. Even if he had the knife in his hand, he still probably wasn't planning on killing her. At home, Jerry is watching the news, and some of Fiona's remains have been found. The sheriff is on the news describing their profile of the serial killer that matches Jerry. Then starts just yelling at Jerry, calling him a killer. Once again, obviously the scene did not happen the way we saw it.
Happened.
But yeah. So Jerry turns off the TV. Then he gets out Fiona's head and talks to her, Bosco, and Mr. Whiskers about how he wants to be good and how it's Mr. Whiskers' fault when he's not. And, they're like... Fiona's head's like, Mr. Whiskers was not there when you killed me. And he's like, oh.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Whiskers is like, fine, I'll play devil's advocate.
Yeah, he does say
and he's like, fine, let's say it's me. You mean the voice inside your head? And he's like, what? No. And Boss is like, yeah, it is. And you're like, oh. And that's the moment where he's like, oh, dang, I had a feeling. It's a great scene. Once again, I kind of breezed over it. This is probably like a 2-minute dialogue scene. But that's the gist of him kind of being like, oh, wait, does that mean I'm bad? Bosco says, no, you're a good boy. And Fiona says, yes, you're bad. And Mr. Whisker says, no, you're just you. Which is like, fair. There is no good. There is no bad.
It's like, I am. And then he gets a call, right?
I don't remember. There's a knock at the door.
No, yeah. Knock at the door.
Knock at the door. And he pulls.
It's Lisa.
Yeah, he puts Bosco away, throws a coat over Fiona, and he goes outside to talk to Lisa, who had brought him some cakes. But when he went outside, he accidentally locked himself out. He plans to go through the skylight and tells her, hey, you just go home. I'll go through the skylight. It's good. And she's like, I can help. And he's like, no, just leave. But once he's on the skylight, she still decides to help him because she's trying to find the much easier solution of, picking the lock with her bobby pin.
Yeah.
But when she picks the lock, Bosco runs towards her, and she has to put him away. As he tries to... And then she notices all the filth and blood before seeing the back of Fiona's head.
Lots of blood. Yeah.
Yeah. Peeking out under the jacket. She starts to back out, but bumps into Jerry. And this is around the point where the movie changes entirely. There is, relatively speaking, no more real comedy in this movie at this point. You are just like, oh, crap. Oh, snap. I mean, there's
everything has hit the fan all at once.
In the words of the Djinn, it has hit the fan.
Yeah. God.
She starts apologizing for going in and tries to leave And he says no. Then he starts yelling at Mr. Whiskers, obviously having an argument with him, but she's not hearing his voice. She's just seeing him yell.
Yeah. And the movie does a really good job of, just panning between him and the cat who's just sitting there.
And you also are getting it from her perspective the whole time of just being like the fear, like, it is great. He tells her he's not going to hurt her, and she runs and locks herself in the bathroom. She's able to arm herself with the towel rack after ripping it off the wall. Jerry breaks through the door, and she hits him twice and runs away. But she doesn't run to the front door because she's not able to get to that, so she closes herself in his bedroom. He comes in and apologizes, and they have a back and forth of him kind of saying he's sorry and her just kind of trying to say the right things to him to try to diffuse the situation. It's such a darkly real moment of as someone, yes, I've never had to deal with it, but I've heard, you hear the story, this is something that sadly women do have to do, where they have to be like, no, you're right, I'm the one I'm so sorry, I'll never do, we can pretend like it's all fine. She's just trying to say whatever she can to get him to let her free. And then she tries to run, and he throws her back onto the bed, but her head hits the it's like a shelf behind by the bed frame, and she breaks her neck. And he lies next to her as she cries and says she just wants to go home. And he says he knows she's suffering, and we cut to him putting her head in the fridge.
Yep.
Yeah. Moving on. I mean, it's great. I'm sad thinking about it, but respect, because that's what they wanted me to feel. So I'm not mad at that. I'm not oh, now the movie's a bummer. No, it's oh crap, dang, this movie is so good at doing. Huge credit to Ryan Reynolds for being able to play all the emotions needed for this role. He's able to play the awkward happy guy, then the full tilt crazy man he needs to hear. It's chef's kiss.
Really.
We then head to him in his room watching his dancing monkey machine thing. While he's drinking vodka, as we see him doing the Mr. Whiskers and Bosco voices himself.
Yeah.
And you're oh.
Yeah. Yeah, where he's doing Bosco's voice as he starts drinking, and then it just...
But it's that moment where you realize, he's just always doing the voice. Because but then also you don't know, because then there's other points where he hears Mr. Whiskers even when he's not doing the voice, so... But it's a really, dark moment, which is nice. It's just you're he's a broken man, and yeah. Then he threatens to do karate on Bosco, which is kind of a callback to the all him out with the girls scene, where he just brings up that he knows karate. It's a throwaway joke in that scene, but then it comes back here with him oh, you want to go, Bosco? And he does karate to the air before falling down to do his nightly prayer. We then head to the accounting office, where Allison is trying to get a hold of Lisa or Jerry, specifically Lisa in the scene, but we find out that she's also tried to reach Jerry. When John and Dave show up, and Dave has her look up an old newspaper on the computer of Jerry as a kid. We then head to Allison showing up at Jerry's house. He opens the door for her, and he's oh, hi, Allison. And then we cut to her seeing her head in the fridge. Bosco tells him that he has now officially crossed the line and is evil.
Remember when I told you about that thin line between good and evil? And I thought you were on the good line still? I've changed my mind.
So you think I'm evil? Absolutely certain of it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love Bosco.
Bosco's a good boy.
I mean, honestly, I love Mr. Whiskers for what he is too. But I really like this movie. Spoiler.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you like this movie. That's the reason I know it exists.
Yeah. I'm the one who told you about it. I was oh, you gotta watch this movie.
Then Mr. Whiskers and the girls try to convince him to kill more people, until they all just start talking at once as a cacophony of noise. which eventually Jerry yells at them to stop, and they do. Jerry goes to talk to Dr. Warren. He tells her he's been crying a lot and not taking his drugs because Mr. Whiskers told him to. Well, not Mr. Whiskers. He knows it's him, but he hears it through Mr. Whiskers. He says he's
like, wait, but that's progress, right?
Yeah. He says he like starts really crying. He's like, I'm a bad person, and she says that, no, you're not. You're just, I'm really disappointed, but it's not like you killed anyone. And he says, well, it kind of is. What if it is like that? Times 3. And then he starts to tell her the story, starting from the beginning, when he notices that she is trying to call for help. So he breaks her phone and kidnaps her because he still needs therapy. He drives her out into a field to continue his session. He asks her if she believes in God. She nods yes. He says that he agrees, but thinks God has it out for him for putting a kid in a home with a father like that and a mother who's lost herself so completely that she'd rather die than be with him.
Yeah.
And if God is all-knowing, he must be okay with him killing people. And she is shaking her head no, she does not agree with that statement. So he removes the tape over her mouth so she can answer some of his questions. He asks her why he hears voices. She says a lot of people hear voices and have thoughts that they can't stop. Thoughts of, just goes through like a lot of like intrusive thoughts kind of concept. And he's like, oh, and he tells him that she has those kind of thoughts, and but the thing you gotta do is fight against it, argue against it, and just not give in to those thoughts. And he's like, oh, you cannot give in to him. Then she ends it with saying, being alone is the root of all suffering, but he is not alone. And then he like has a funny joke about how 15 years of therapy in 15 minutes. Because it is still Ryan Reynolds. He still has to, make jokes here and there. We then head to Dave and John going to Jerry's to check up on Allison. John says he's going to stay in the car, to alert, Dave if there's any trouble. Not because he's a coward.
No.
Dave goes around back and finds Allison and Lisa's cars. He then heads upstairs. When he opens the door, Bosco runs out. From just looking inside, Dave pukes and tells John to call the cops.
Yeah.
I will say I think there was kind of a cool like feature of when Bosco runs out here. It's kind of it was kind of hinted at when Lisa came in. I think it's also maybe something about like how animals and like dogs and cats are considered different. Is I think Bosco is at the point was getting tired of the smell and wanted out of that place because he could they always say like, oh, a cat will stay and like eat your body, like like I think there's an element of there. That's why it works so well for the voices they choose to give these. But like the second he had a chance, the Bosco wanted out. Not Bosco the character we know, but the dog itself. Wanted out of there. But yeah, so they call we assume they call the cops. We don't quite know yet. Later, a little bit later in the night, because it's now darker, Jerry comes home and takes Dr. Warren upstairs. He starts to freak out because he can't find Bosco and Mr. Whiskers. He leaves her inside as he goes looking for them. When he comes back, Mr. Whiskers is home and telling him that, Bosco is probably, dead, hit by a minivan, which is also a callback to earlier. I believe Mr. Whiskers, like when he was angry at him, told him to get hit by a minivan. So now he's telling him, he's probably hit by a minivan. That was kind of a cool little callback to a joke from earlier in the thing. Yeah. And also tells him that, it's actually for the better that he's gone, because now he won't be whining when we kill things. It's going to be easier now. Dr. Warren says she wants to make a phone call because she doesn't want to be alone. And Jerry says, well, you don't have to be alone. And he goes and grabs Fiona's head. Warren starts to scream.
Yeah.
Then Fiona and Mr. Whiskers follow suit in a, I guess I'm gonna say that it's an homage to Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation.
What Where everyone screams together.
Yeah, when Leatherface starts screaming, that's what I think. That's what I'm thinking. I mean, it's probably not. That's what I want to believe in my headcanon. But yeah, but he, what was I saying? Yeah, Jerry yells at them to stop. So they do because they're him. He then they hear the cops are showing up outside. So he takes Mr. Whiskers to the bathroom. He has one last conversation with him as he escapes through this secret door and ladder into the bowling alley and downstairs. Because also, by the way, that he lives on top of a bowling alley. Didn't bring it up because it's literally not relevant till this scene, and even then, still kind of isn't. But but yeah, he lives on top of a bowling alley. So yeah, he's down there in the bowling alley. He's going down the ladder. He hits the gas line, popping it out. Yeah, so now there's a gas leak. SWAT gets Dr. Warren and Mr. Whiskers out. As some... What the heck does that say? As a spark lights the gas. Jerry hears the girls' voices telling him to come to them. Mr. Whiskers tells him to run. And Bosco tells him to just lie down and die in the flames so he can't do any more harm. And everyone else is suffering. Yeah. So Jerry chooses death. We then head to Mr. Whiskers and Bosco saying goodbye to each other in a white void. And while this is happening, you're still kind of hearing Jerry heartbeat in the background, and then you hear him give his last breath. And then he shows up in the void. Jerry's here, and so is his mom, his dad, Lisa, Fiona, and Allison. And then they're joined by Jesus, who is played by Michael Pink. And they do a musical number of Sing a Happy Song that ends with Jesus lifting Jerry into the sky on a forklift.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the movie.
It sure is.
Before we get into our final thoughts, I do have one little fun fact kind of thing that I didn't know where else to put it, so I'm putting it at the end. Michael R. Perry was working on a TV show, and this is how he came up with the idea for the voices. And he didn't say what TV show, so I don't know what it was. And he asked the consultants they had from the profiling unit in the FBI how they catch a serial killer who has no motive. And they told him that they figure out what movie is inside his head. What movie does he think he's in? And he said to himself that he wants to see that movie, so he made that movie. And that's this movie. This movie is the movie that's inside a serial killer's head that they think they're in. Yeah. My thoughts on this movie are it's really good. It's fun. It's really well shot. It's directed really well. It's written amazingly, acted great. It's got such a weird tone for sure, but it bounces through a bunch of different tones and does it in a way that probably on paper probably shouldn't work, but does. The way they're able to hit the low lows of the darkness with the high highs of the comedy, it's weird, but it's really good. I will say, as a horror movie, I completely understand this being someone's top. As a comedy, I do have to question Chris's psyche, because this, if you don't know, this is Chris's favorite comedy film. We had a podcast, a failed podcast at this point, where one of our top 5 things, and one of the episodes was on top 5 comedies, and this was Chris's number 1 comedy film, and it does make me question my friend, but I respect him because it's a good movie. It's a weird choice as the movie you want when you want comedy. But it is very good, and I love it, and I am worried about him and will be keeping an eye on him.
You know what? I'm gonna stand my ground and say, still my favorite comedy movie, and I think it's because it's such a different form of comedy. That's fair. No, it does it so well.
Yeah, I was joking. To be fair, I want to make sure. I'm joking.
I understand.
Okay, it's a bit.
But
it's a bit
for the audience.
Okay.
If you enjoy dark comedy, this movie does it really well, and somehow manages to balance the dark comedy with really impactful emotional scenes where it really makes you feel sympathetic for this murderer, which is wild.
And some genuine tension too. Like the scene of him and Lisa, like your heart is racing. You're like, oh gosh, like what's gonna happen to her? You mean because you know what kind of movie you're watching, but you're like, no, it can't be.
Yeah, and you really don't want it to happen to Lisa.
Yeah,
because she's just a sweet person, and part of you knows exactly what's going to happen before it happens, and you're just like dreading it the entire way through. But yeah, love this movie. Especially after watching it a second time, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember why I like this movie so much. Like the visuals are so like striking, and they kind of imprint into your brain, like Milton in its bright, like Pepto-Bismol pink that's everywhere. It almost feels like a Tim Burton movie, but also not at all. With this like stark contrast between grim reality and like this weird fantasy land that Jerry lives in. I think my main criticism of this movie is probably that it's I don't know how useful it is as a movie in regards to like talking about mental health and like people with legitimate mental illnesses and like actual psychopaths and sociopaths. Should we feel sympathy for people who've murdered multiple people? That a legitimate concern, but as a movie I enjoy it a lot, and I could probably watch this again if I had to, with absolutely no qualms about it.
I feel the need to, after you bring up that, to bring up a stat I like to bring up a lot of times, which is that, people with mental illnesses are far more likely to actually be the victims of violence than to perpetrate violence. It is a stat I bring up a lot because it's a kind of problem that's in horror. I didn't even think about it watching this movie because I just enjoyed it so much, but it is there. It's true. In real life, it's far less likely. I mean, yes, he is like a schizophrenic like sociopath, so it's a schizophrenic sociopath might be more likely to kill someone than a non. But you get the point. The point is, in general, mental illness is very demonized in horror movies and probably shouldn't be.
And if you are suffering from mental illnesses where medications can help, do take your medications.
Yeah. And if, you go talk to someone,
Yeah. It's okay to get help.
Yeah. So on that note, we'll move on to talking about next week. Next week, we're talking about, once again, because like we said already, a couple weeks now, we're on our kick of not doing franchises for a little bit to finish out this year. Yeah. So next week, we're going to be watching a movie that I wanted to see because I watched like a video on it once, and I was like, oh, I need to see that movie now. That is a movie called The Faculty. That's what we're going to be watching next week. It's a 2000s.
I think I might have seen that.
It's like it's a post-Scream kind of movie. That kind of teen horror, bunch of young, hot stars thrown into a movie. But this time it's not. Yeah, this movie's not a slasher though. I believe it's more of an alien film, if I believe. So
interesting.
Yeah, so we're gonna be watching that next week. Who knows if we're gonna like it? I don't know. But yeah, if you like this podcast, if you liked this, please leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast app you're using, whether that be, Spotify, Apple Music, Google Play, and those are the only 3. If you are watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe and leave a comment down below. Punch that bell. Button. I don't care.
Hit the like button.
Hit the like button. But also know that that's only for your algorithm. I mean, it'll be cool to see it for us, but it actually doesn't help the video. Watch the whole video. But if you're at this point, you already know that. You already did.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah. Also, if you want to support us directly, you can head on over to patreon.com/horrorboys, where you can get this podcast early, as well as a bunch of other rewards that we would have to make if you gave us money at those tiers. But we'll do it. We will make more content for you. We'll do it.
Yeah, just for you.
Just for you.
Probably until other people decide to support us financially. But yeah. Until then, it'll be just for you.
It'll be just you. Just our little secret. first patron. I've been Austin, joined by Chris. We love you. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.